Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons as I take up more of your questions in another segment of Ask Judy. If you're enjoying these, please do hit like and subscribe. This question is from Barbara Seller, who said, I enjoyed these reruns while I'm having lunch and just saw The Minstrel. I'm wondering if you know how they did the scene with Grandpa driving John Boy to the hospital. Since Will Geer didn't drive, a lot of the scenes in the vehicles, if you see the two people in the vehicle and they're having a conversation, then typically that was done by what we call a process shot. And it would be done on a sound stage. They would have either rear projection or side projection. So whichever way the camera's pointed, they would have different footage. So if they're supposed to be driving along the country roads, they'd have footage of like a country road that had been shot. And so that would project behind the vehicle if they're facing forward. So if it's a two shot and you're facing and you're looking, and in the rear view mirror, the rear window, you can see the road behind them. They would be driving along. So, and it would be, they'd have sort of rockers, like they'd have crew, strong, the grip guys, that would lever the car to give it some sense of movement, a little jolt here and there. They would have the lights on it. They'd have the camera, positioned wherever it was. They would have, with the lights, they'd have a crew person who had like a tree branch, and they would periodically like swipe that tree branch in front of the light to simulate them going past, trees and shadows through the trees. Then if they shifted around and they were, say, you can see Grandpa in the foreground and you can see John Boy sitting in the passenger seat. So they then have a different projection that would be sort of the trees going by on the side of the car. And so they would then shoot that. The camera would come to the side and position up, same thing. And then they might have the tree branches coming from the front through the front window. So things like that. So that's how they would shoot those. If it was a longer shot where you actually could see the car driving down the road, then it would have been somebody else driving, just wearing Grandpa's hat. And, they just put two people in the car. And if it was too far away, it might not even be Richard. It might just be Richard's stand-in and Will's stand-in driving down the road. So that's kind of how they did those on our show. This question is from Cindy Sumler, who's asking about Cindy, Ben's wife. Her father was on his way to see Cindy at the Waltons' house. It was storming that day and he was killed in an accident. Then on season 9, after Ben comes home from being a prisoner from the Japanese, he tells his father that he is wanting to be an engineer and that Cindy's father could help him go to college for him to get his degree. So she's confused because it was written in one episode that Cindy's father had been killed, and then later on he's alive. So yes, that happened sometimes where they'd lose track of something that was said, and then later in another episode, something contradictory would be said. So that's a good catch on that. I've not gotten to those episodes again recently, so I haven't had a chance to see if that is sort of what was said and what happened. But I wouldn't be surprised because we did have those sorts of continuity inconsistencies. And then I'm also wondering about Ralph Waite. He was in a few episodes in season 9 and then he was gone. Did he quit? I wish he would have finished out the rest of the season since it was the last one. I've heard mixed things. My understanding, because Michael left, I think, in season 8, and she wanted to go on to do other acting opportunities and went off to do the series Nurse that she won another couple of Emmys for, I believe, 1 or 2. And then I had thought that Ralph left in season 9 because he wanted to have more time to pursue other things. Nobody knew that, well, we didn't know that it was going to be the last season. So I think he wanted to have fewer time restraints of having to be in every single episode, because that was a 9-month commitment. So it really did restrict actors' time in their ability to go do other jobs. So that was what I thought happened, but just because that's what happened with Richard and with Michael. But I'm not entirely sure. I heard somebody else say, well, he wanted more of a raise, and so in order to give him that raise, they said, well, good, we'll give you that raise, but we won't have you in as many episodes. I don't know if that was true. These are all sort of rumors, and Ralph is not here for me to confirm one way or the other. So, but yes, we would have loved to have had him throughout the entire season 9. We would have loved to have Michael all the way through to the end, and Richard. So it is tough. You get attached to the family. We were attached to the family, so we were always sorry when we lost someone. And of course, with Will and Ellen, it was a little different. Will, of course, having passed away, no choice there, and Ellen with her stroke. It was just really tough for her to have to do a lot of work. So I think health-wise, she was limited in how much she could physically handle. City Guy USA asked, why wouldn't one production team, producers, directors, etc., do all the shows? Wouldn't switching out these people cause more of a disjointed show, as one doesn't know what the overall story has been? Earl Hamner was a constant throughout the entire series, so he was sort of our glue. Producers come and go. It tends to be a fact. Some shows, there might be a key person who stays forever, but that's not always the case with shows. I'm not sure what it's about. I'm not sure. Sometimes it might be finance driven. Sometimes it might be personal. Sometimes, there's another exciting opportunity that's presented to someone. People move on, and it is a business. It is a job for us, and that's something that doesn't show so much from the side when you as a viewer are engaged in a show. It's easy to lose track of the fact that every one of those people is doing a job. They might love the job, but they're doing a job. So, and sometimes I think, like with our first cinematographer, he was brilliant, but his health then hit a point where he just wasn't up to doing it anymore. And we didn't have the same director all the time, because time-wise, it didn't work. A director had to be preparing a show while one was being shot, so they were always leapfrogging. So we had, so one director couldn't do the whole season. They just wouldn't be able to be preparing a show and shooting a show and editing a show like that. I don't know how on some shows where you see the same person directs all the episodes, I don't know how they do it. I really don't. But that was the way ours set up. And we did, about 20, on average, 24 episodes a season. So that's a lot of shows to prepare. So we had a mix of writers, and we changed directors, but sometimes the producers, we changed producers. Sometimes the producers had already been writers or story editors on the show. So they weren't suddenly some new person that had no prior connection to the show. So that's, I believe, pretty much how that worked. Some of our producers had been writers. Some had been story editors, and they might have worked on other shows within the company. So I think I don't think the show was ever disjointed because of that, because Earl was that constant, and the cast knew the feel of the show, so that was constant, and the crew knew the look and the feel of the show. So I think all of that really helped with that consistency. Yes, we had the storylines that people lost track of and where things contradicted themselves, but I don't know that Earl was there the whole time, and he didn't catch him either. So it's just a lot of episodes to keep track of. So I hope that kind of explains it. Thank you for joining me for this segment of Ask Judy. If you have a question, put it somewhere in the comments below. That's where I grab these questions from. I'll be back with more behind the scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy and more special guests. Thanks for watching.